Hello. So, Rubenstein Street. As well, most of you, I know, have seen at least one episode of my series on the Dostoevsky sites in the city. You know, Dostoevsky is not really the main character of the stories, but it's more like the people of his time, his contemporaries, the characters of his works. And Rubenstein Street happens to be exactly in the heart of that sort of Dostoevsky neighborhood. This is the part of the city where Dostoevsky happened to live, work, shop, have visit friends and everything. And this part of the city, just amazingly, hasn't really changed much over the centuries. And that's why we love it. That's why we consider it absolute gem and a time capsule. And well, this is a good way to show you what the life was like, what the household was like, what the, everyday objects surrounded people in the streets and everything, you know. So Rubenstein Street, it's clearly not the, let's say, mm, not the original name of the street. It's the name that was Kelly, thank you so much for the tips. That's the name of the street starting from late 19th century. And then it kind of was brought back to it already after well, in the 20th century. So it's named after Anton Rubinstein, the hold on a second. One of the viewers cannot join. I'm gonna send her the link. Yes. So the one of the founders of musical education in Russia in general, he and his brother, they were at the footsteps of the establishment of musical schools and especially conservatory, which is the higher educational institution for musicians, composers, and everything. So he happened to live in the street, but in the end of it, but we begin from the beginning. We start from the beginning of the street, and yeah, so the street is quite short, and on the one hand, I would say it looks like any other street in this area, mid 19th century, old, well, 150, 170-year-old houses, tenant houses. Most of them are not really super remarkable, but there are some specific ones. Well, last time we already started talking about Rubenstein Street, but it was more to kind of give you the taste of what we will be looking at in the upcoming tours. So in the end of the street, so we just saw the beginning in the previous photos, almost the beginning, and the street ends with the square, the five corner square, and this building is just the crown of that crossroad of five streets. And we will speak about this building in the end, but well, I just wanted to share with you. In this tour, I will be sharing a lot of old photographs and also a lot of photos from the tours, the screenshots, the postcards that you shared with me, post tours. And I once took a tour, and I was there with my tourists. Arranged a tour on the rooftops of St. Petersburg, and I have some videos indeed because I also filmed it. As you can see, I'm here with the gimbal and I was filming. And I don't think I ever actually got to share those videos with you. So if I put everything together, I actually might take you on a tour of the rooftops of St. Petersburg. So let me know later on the chat if you would be interested, because it will be not just one specific roof, but it will be a collection of my videos from different times, rooftops of the most beautiful city in the world. I know I am biased, but I'm totally fine with it. And yes, so that's one of the iconic views for sure, overlooking the building, overlooking the Yoffa house. So that building with the high tower. That's the house that belonged to a merchant Joffe. The Rubenstein Street, however, begins because we want to start from the beginning. Starts with at the intersection of Nevsky Avenue and Rubenstein Street. I'm sure you all know Nevsky Avenue. I just wanted to give a little bit of a teaser. In this photo, you can see the Kazan Cathedral. We have walked past it multiple times on my tours. And the two other buildings below the Kazan Cathedral, the Zinger building and the Yeliseyev shop, my videographer filmed it inside. So we have videos, which means soon I will be scheduling those. Let me know if you're interested to see them. Well, those going to be really special tours, sure. Yeah, well, that's the Nevsky Avenue, the Fifth Avenue of the city is very straight, where almost every building there is a big deal. And the video for today is, well, firstly, it was filmed by Oleg, almost everything, and I just included bits of my own videos, which I originally prepared for my YouTube channel, but it didn't work out this way. You know, a lot of my plans were ruined in 2022, but others came up, so to speak. And I just decided to put together my camera roll, my dump on my phone, and Oleg's video. So I think we're going to need a couple of episodes to cover this very short but very interesting street. So this is the avenue. This is the Fifth Avenue itself. Well, Nevsky Avenue. Well, I'm sure. Well, if you watch my tours, you remember at least bits of this area. But we need to come here to this street and well, Nevsky Avenue. You see, it's big, it's loud. But once you turn into Rubenstein Street, if it's the middle of the day, it's nice, it's quiet, it's very peaceful, especially if you go into one of those courtyards, because as you can see, there's no space between the buildings, right? There's no space. And all the space is behind the houses, like in the courtyard. So if you turn there, you won't hear a single engine, a single car. That's just amazing how it works in St. Petersburg. But after dark, you know, after the sunset, it gets very loud because this is the famous bar street of St. Petersburg. But as you know, for me, it's not only the vibe, it's not about just the vibe, but it's history. So I'm kind of bringing everything together. And the very first building here in the Rubenstein Street, well, this house has different names, but let's start from the beginning. Obviously, the street, which started to develop in the 19th century, well, it didn't look like this immediately. Originally, the buildings were of 2 or 3 floors, maybe with a mezzanine right there, the kind of the additional floor, in the central section of the house, kind of the attic floor. And most of the buildings eventually would be rebuilt because the new technologies were available, and the price of land was extremely high, so it made more sense to build higher. So eventually, that small 2-floor house with a mezzanine would be rebuilt into this tenant house of 5 floors, right? That belonged to Rostovtsev. Well, Rostovtsev was a merchant, one of the very rich and influential people in the country. In the city, at least in the city, and he just rented it out. He didn't even live in this house. Mostly since this is a very prestigious area, there used to be a private bank. And if you see on the second floor, there is like something written there, like a big deal. So it actually says the bank. It's kind of banker's office of Zakary Zhdanov. That was one of the most successful private, banking services of the 19th century, turn of the 20th century. So and this is the bank building itself. I was looking at it for a long time, and I couldn't understand really what was missing. And then I realized none of them have laptops and computers, right? So they only have papers, big books, heavy books, and that's it. Uh, anyway, but it doesn't look like this anymore. And obviously, the ground floors would be all sorts of businesses. Well, for example, especially coffee shops and bakeries. So there used to be a coffee shop on from the side of the Nevsky. It belonged to Filipov. Actually, Filipov was one of the mm, well, he established one of the first bakery chains in Russia. And if you can see, well, this is kind of an ad from a newspaper. On the in the upper left and right hand corners, you see the coat of arms of Russia, which means, well, the businesses were only allowed to put the coat of arms of Russia, well, in the Russian Empire, if they were official suppliers. So Filipov was the official supplier, and he established one of the first and the biggest bakery chains in the country. And there is even still a legend, which may be partially just be a legend, actually. It is believed that small buns with raisins, well, any kinds of, pastries with raisins were introduced to the Russian market by Philippe because, like, one day, um, well, because he supplied, he supplied his baked stuff all around the country and also to all the rich homes and the Russian aristocrats. So one of the, well, legend says it was a Tsar, but like Alexander the Third, that I'm not sure it was a Tsar. It could be anyone. So someone just bit a bit of the pastry and discovered something brown in it and asked Filipa what it was. And it said, oh, it's just raisin. So, but it could have been something else or someone else, maybe a cockroach. So it's just a legend. But yeah, so his buns with raisins were, and also other places with raisins were very popular. Maybe it's just a legend. I don't know, but uh, it sounds actually too plausible. Also, there was a cafe, like a proper cafe. So um, Filipov had just bakery, but he also had coffee houses. So that was a coffee house with a bakery. And this is the menu, which I believe is just a work of art. Look at this design. Art Nouveau-ish with a kind of ethnic style, maybe. Also, there used to be a piano shop here, Ronish. Okay. And they also supplied, by the way, the musical instruments to the court. And for at least 100 years, there have always been some sort of eateries. From my times, there was McDonald's there, but obviously due to sanctions, there's no McDonald's in Russia anymore. But there is kind of another chain for that, like fast food chain. But it's interesting that in the Soviet times, there also used to be the fast food store where food and all the drinks were served from the vending machines. That was something absolute high tech for the Soviet times. I mean, even now, even now it feels like wow, that's impressive. Like all the vending machines, and it was cheap, it was affordable, but it was just part of it was kind of an attraction because there were no other places like that in the city. Coffee, stuff, ice cream, sandwiches from the vending machines. Wow, that was a big deal. But they claimed that the food was cheap, but not really good. So it wasn't good, and then people had some stomach problems, and eventually someone came up with the name gastritis. So, and everyone would say, "Let's go to gastrit." So this food gives you more stomach problems than nourishes you, but I like the idea. Yeah, and it's interesting that in the modern times there used to be a McDonald's, which is I think just the contemporary version of gastritis from the Soviet times. Yeah, I just like how it works, you see. But for us, for those who remember the Hago times and still gets a little nostalgic about it, you may remember this archway with the portraits of some of the remarkable Russian writers and well, musicians. Um, for example, this is Mayakovsky, a poet, a Soviet poet, by the way, avant-garde poet who was born in Georgia. And I have talked a lot about him in connection with Georgia. He spoke Georgian and he performed in Georgia. Alexander Bloch, I visited his apartment a few weeks ago, and it's my favorite poet of the Silver Age Russian literature. That's the period of early 20th century. That's considered Silver Age. And 19th century, like first half of the 19th century, is considered the golden age of Russian poetry, something like that. And here I am. I'm sharing all the photos, so I'm sharing here the announcement so that I posted on my stories on Instagram back in 2021, summer 2021. So the bar hopping tour. Oh, yes. So I did a lot of bar hops with my private tourists, but also I really enjoy taking you on live bar hops. So with me, it's me with my favorite poet, and this is Dostoevsky because he just had to be there because he lived in this area, and I'm sure he would have dropped by this bar had it been around back in the days because it's called Orthodox. And this, well, the bar, well, that's, by the way, that cucumber, it's like a prosecco cucumber martini prosecco cucumber. That cocktail was amazing, super refreshing. Got me drunk very quickly though, but that's just me being me. I don't really need much to get drunk. Yeah, but nevertheless, I lost that scarf, by the way. That was a present from my mom-in-law, and I lost it. I think I lost it approximately at the same time. Nabokov, of course. And well, with the Chekhov, well, we were talking about Chekhov tomorrow, right? And the previous episode, two previous episodes on Chekhov are still available on my YouTube channel, just say on my website. And since, well, you kind of see so the bar Orthodox was in charge of the decoration of the entire archway. So the bar itself served the traditional Russian drinks or Russian or cocktails that were made with traditional Russian ingredients like herbs, something like that. It was, well, it was really special, like they would add some pine tree nuts in your cocktails or a little bit of tar or some other nuts, well, it's just kind of some really local herbs. They would add some local herbs to mojito. That was interesting, very interesting. I love that bar very much. And I would most of the time would go there not to drink, but just to enjoy the vibe. And I would just take coffee and just sit there, especially during the day. Well, and obviously I took Oscar with me. That's Oscar with the menu, and the menu looked like a book, just like a book. Well, because it's all about well, literature, Russian culture, and the barmen were there always. They were very handsome. So, yeah, I pretended I wasn't really filming them. Apparently I was, but actually, well, they allowed me to film, but they also asked me to film more of myself than everyone else. So, and I did, but it's just someone happened to take a postcard. I wasn't really taking photos. It's just someone took a postcard. Look, I mean, just look at this barman, right? Look at these bartenders. And Oscar is enjoying himself. And you see all the small bottles to the left from Oscar. These are infusions. So Russian infusions is it's a big deal, and they are very interesting recipes with very interesting twists. Again, local herbs mainly, or just a combination of some, alcohol and fruits and local berries like lingonberries, for example, or raspberry. Yeah. So it was really, really fun. It was good, like very atmospheric, and it was a good place to take tourists to. Those were still the times before the war, so there was no issue, it never brushed anyone the wrong way when you said, oh, it's a cool Russian place. Now it doesn't sound that cool anymore, but with you, it's okay because we know. And yeah, so that cocktail was very good. They actually added honey into it, honey, orange, and something else, and some rum. It was very good. Yeah. And that cocktail actually, I realized later on that this is the cocktail from another bar. I'll talk about it later on. There were multiple bars, so they're like in every building there is a different bar, or even a couple of bars. And just so you would know, Oscar had so much fun that after that, in the morning, he had a hangover, and he had his post hangover breakfast with caviar. And I'm not kidding. This is the black caviar and red caviar. So Oscar really had a good time. He had a blast. And after that, the next day, he had to fly to Stefan. By the way, just before this tour, Stefan did a tour in a beautiful church. And also today they're going to be well, Stefan and Catherine are going to be filming from a festival. And well, just can't miss, you just can't miss it. The tour is going to be lasting for 2 hours. One of our tours overlap, but it's totally okay. I mean, so yeah, I just say you don't want to miss it. It's kind of one of the one-off tours, so you don't want to miss that. Well, this cocktail was very good. It's kind of Three Sisters. Why I'm posting it because Chekhov, Three Sisters, Orthodox bar, and I had all the Three Sisters myself. These are the local infusions they make with mandarins, so tangerines, some local rum, some vodka, and tangerine juice. This was so good. It was so good. So I had all the Three Sisters myself, and we did it live. And I wish they were recordings, but they were not. And that's the traditional kind of a side dish they will give. Well, if you want to have some food, and you see, this is the actual teeny tiny um, pine cones, and when they're so small, you can actually make a well homemade jelly with it or jam. Well, but they don't really come. You don't really make jam from them, but you kind of make sort of marmalade with them, and this is good, like really good. Yeah, and I think that was part of the needle of a Christmas tree. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if you can eat it, but it was good. So, and it's on the dry rye bread. Oh, it was yeah, so you see, it's like a very special place, like really, and yes, very often it also depended on how, well, let's say it always depends on how much you drink, but it's highly likely to come across a horse uh, that just walks down the street because, well, that's what I did also one of the evenings with my tourists. We just we just had a horse and it was just passing by one of the bars and well, it like well, I just joked, taxi, and they stopped. So later on, my tourist had a really nice ride back to hotel, not in an Uber, but in a carriage. And yes, I'm so sorry, but in one of the bars, this is the cocktail they will give you. It's not the Orthodox bar, right? But this is kind of because it's the St. Valentine's Day, so I was thinking to share it with you. It's like gonna I showed it to Catherine the other day, and she's like, okay, like what is it? Actually, it came with the cocktail, and then she said, well, yeah, I'm sure many women actually said that. Yeah. But it was a good cocktail, but it was in another bar, like a building away from there. From the other side of the street, again, this is just the intersection of Nevsky and Rubenstein. Is this big house, tenant house, obviously, and it belonged to the Romanovs themselves because anyone could just buy a plot of land and build a house there and get good dividends. Well, the Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich, who was uncle to Nicholas II, who happened to be also Governor General of Moscow, he uh, bought the plot of land and built this huge tenant house. And if you can see in this photo to the right side, from the right side of the building, there is a smaller house. Actually, this is the palace where they lived. Who they? Well, he and Elizaveta Fedorovna, who was his wife, and she was also sister to Alexandra Fedorovna, wife to Nicholas II. So she was granddaughter to Queen Victoria. And we spoke a lot about Sergei and Elizaveta, Ella, it's written there, Ella, in connection with my tours on the Romanovs' legacy in the Holy Land, because Sergei and Ella were one of the patrons of the construction of the Russian compound, Mary Magdalene Church, which I took you to last weekend, and also the Ascension Convent we're going to see tonight, later on, to wash away the stains of the previous two tours. And they both visited the Holy Land. And as you remember, Ella was buried, her body eventually was brought to Jerusalem, and now it is it's not actually buried, it is hidden in the church of Mary Magdalene in the Mount of Olives. Yes. Well, but I'm not getting into the story because we have spoken about it, but it's all about the vibe. So actually, speaking of the vibe and the bar street, this this has all, well, starting from the Soviet times, this street has had these special, places with unique vibe. And, we say gastritis, right? Just across the street. But before that, um, okay, in this building used to be a hotel called Moscow, and then they will open a restaurant as well, and they would be also called Moscow, or like Moscow region, so to speak, but Moscovia. And that restaurant just became a big hub for Leningrad youth, not school kids, but students, graduates, local musicians as well, actors, people, just youngsters, young people of Leningrad. They would hang out there. It became their favorite hangout place, and yeah, it just happened to be in the same Rubenstein Street. And I'm just sharing with you a lot of photographs. That was the place where also the members of the rock club, Leningrad Rock Club, would hang out. Uh, the many legendary Russian rock stars started their career there. They would hang out together. They would collaborate. They would write songs there, and then from then they would go and head to and give concerts in the rock club that I told you about in one of the previous tours. So we have already visited Rubenstein Street at the previous tours, but we haven't seen everything. We talked about some specific things, which I will be also reminding you of as this tour goes, but in general, and just sharing the photographs of Soviet period hippies too. A lot of progressive musicians. KGB hated it. There were a lot of KGB agents there also mingling. Here in this photo, for example, you see a woman, a blonde lady in the left. This is Joanna Stingray. I told you about her on one of the previous tours. So she was an American who managed to come to the Soviet Union, and she made friends and became a sweetheart with one of the most legendary. Well, at that point, he wasn't that legendary, but now he is. Boris Grebenshikov, the band leader of Aquarium. And here, I think you can see my mouse now. You see this man sitting. Well, this is Viktor Tsoi, who was also one of the super popular, iconic musicians from the Kino band. I'm sure Misha spoke about it. Misha did fantastic tours on the Soviet music industry. And that's Boris Grebenshikov from Aquarium Band. He's still around. Misha actually attended his concert in Tbilisi a few months ago. Well, he's just an absolute legend, absolute legend. And this photo was taken in Rubenstein Street. So, it's just nice to see how, regardless of the political situation and KGB agents just probably sniffing around the corner, these people just had fun and try to distance themselves from everything else. I would say just pretty much the same as many people are doing nowadays too. And in this house, we visited an interesting bar. It closed in 2022 and never reopened, but that was a very interesting bar. It's called Kommunalchka, a bar in the communal apartment. That was the actual bar in the actual communal apartment. So people who lived in this communal apartment, just to remind you, this was about communal apartment. This is the thing of the Soviet period when all these big apartments of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rooms were nationalized by the Bolsheviks after the revolution, and the Bolsheviks needed to deal with the issue of the insufficient uh, residential spaces and apartments for people because after the revolution there was a great number of workers and peasants that came to Leningrad and other big cities. So it was like this: one family gets one room. So the apartments could be of 10, 15 rooms. So imagine one apartment with like 10 rooms. So, and as you probably remember, there are still about 60 to 80,000 families that live in communal apartments. So the people just from one communal apartment decided to unite and turn their apartment into a bar. And they did. And they did. And we visited this communal apartment bar with you on one of the tours. And they had license and everything, but eventually, unfortunately, they had to close because it was just loud. So this is their corridor, and they have a big mirror there. They had a bar. They paid taxes, everything, but it was just too loud, and it was. And since this bar is located in an apartment, so the people eventually filed a big complaint against them. And I'm telling this while I'm showing you a photo of a chicken. Do you know why? I have no idea. But here in this apartment, they had a dog, they had a couple of cats, and also they had chickens. And it wasn't food; it was just their pets. This is the photo from the internet, but I think I also had photo. I think I'm sharing the photo of another chick. Yeah, there you go. It just it was like an apartment. So this is somebody's room that was turned into a shisha place. And this is the view from the balcony. I mean, Nevsky Avenue. And yes, very often they would throw like pajamas party or like, you had to come with like wearing a homeware, like the bathrobes and everything. So I like those parties too. I never really attended those parties, but I heard a lot of them, a lot about them. Another house, uh, well, it looks a bit ornate, right? Very ornate, very Russian because of the kind of this arched shape. It looks a bit like traditional Russian headpiece, kokoshnik. It's true. And it is built in this eclectic style with definitely a bit of kind of a old Russian influence. So it's kind of a neo-Russian Art Nouveau, kind of something like that. And this house belonged to the Trinity Lover of Saint Sergius, which is one of the most highly venerated um, convents in Russia. Not it's not really far from Moscow, several hours drive. And this convent, well, Lavra is more than a convent. It's like a big convent with a lot of institutions, with a lot of management, different branches, and so on. It's like a big complex. They also decided to buy some land, build a house, and make money from renting out apartments. It was totally okay. So yes, churches could also earn money this way. However, there is not really much in the lobbies. You know how much I like lobbies, and some of the lobbies are absolutely breathtaking. This house, I think, it just kind of everything was invested in the exterior, and the interior is pretty simple, pretty basic. And if you can see the house of the building from the window is yellow, that's because the back facade, the inner side of the building is always looking very, very similar, yellow, a bit rundown, shabby, and you know, you know it. Another building, Rubenstein Street 4, very eclectic. Well, I would say even Art Nouveau, not an eclecticism from Art Nouveau. It was built for well, it was built by architect Alexander Khrenov in 1904, and it was built for a big merchant who eventually, oh well, that merchant opened a restaurant around the corner on Nevsky Avenue and owned a big apartment in this house, and the rest, mm, well, and the rest of them would be just apartments for rent, just like all the other buildings here. And Khrenov was very, very good with Art Nouveau. He knew a lot about it, and he just built some really splendid Art Nouveau buildings in St. Petersburg. Not so many of them, but all of them that we know are absolutely gorgeous. So, of course, we see a Lorelei and stained glass, and uh, and the lobbies. We will see that in a minute. And I thought to share with you also photos from one of the tours that I attended. These are the photos from the pandemic times. We went out on a lockdown, and since there were no tourists, we were out of work. My colleagues would often arrange these tours for colleagues, and we would just gather, you know, colleagues, guides, and give tours to each other, and we would tip each other, and this is how me and many of my colleagues survived during that. Yeah, but I had you. I had virtual tours, but my colleague didn't. A little bit of the lobby. I think it's just gorgeous. And I like it that there's not really much of decoration, just about the right amount of it. It's still beautiful. It's not too much. And I like the colors itself, very subtle, um, and great number of stained glass. And you can clearly see this is the old stained glass. Like half of it survived. I don't know what happened with the other part. Must have been broken. The ironwork, the original poppy. I think it's a maybe it's a, maybe it's not a poppy. No, I think it's probably a tulip. No, I don't know. So the ironwork survived, by the way. And this is the shaft of the elevator. So when this house was built in 1904, it already had electricity, elevator, and all that. And it's a small power station too. Many doors still have the original door decoration, the pseudo ports. The house has been restored. Well, no, let's put several years ago it was restored, so I saw it restored. We visited it already after restoration, and well, I'm just sharing some of the photos with you. But I told you, right? In the original, it's all about the courtyard. So whenever there is a chance to explore a courtyard, go for it. And on one of my tours, we did explore this courtyard. We went to the courtyard to visit the bar. Well, I'm going to talk about that bar in a minute. And in this courtyard, a local artist, mosaic artist, placed uh, several of her works. They all have kind of one topic about some important pilgrimage sites in Russia or Christianity-wise, obviously, and it's just something a bit unexpected because, well, it's a bar street, right? And most people go to that archway not because they want to see the mosaics, but they want to go to the bar, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. But and then on your way, it's like you see this, well, religious mosaics and religious topics. This is kind of, oh, how interesting. Yeah. So, and exactly in this house, there used to be the depressive bar place. That's the one. And well, it was a very grim, very dark place. I don't know if you remember it. Later, let me know later on the chat if you remember any of those songs because some of you did. And a very, I would say, special element of the design or well, the interior design of this shop is the news, which you can see from the left of the bartender. Um, that scared me for a while, for a minute, but then I kind of came to terms with the news hanging over the bar. And, well, it was a dark, green, very depressive place. And I loved it. I liked the vibe a lot. You can hardly see faces of the people. You can hardly see a face of the bartender. So, well, I sat at the bar and said Oscar with me. Then I treated Oscar to the cocktail, and then Oscar fell. It was just exactly at the right time. And someone took a postcard, and well, now we have this memory of Oscar just had too much that he just passed out. So it was very good. So like a Russian depressive bar. No wonder this is the place of Dostoevsky. No wonder. Absolutely. Okay, another building. It's likely it's going to be the last building we visit tonight. It belonged to a relative to the Romanovs through Emperor Alexander I, so grandson of Catherine the Great. So this house belonged to the family of Duke George Alexander, Duke of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. Well, many Romanovs had their property. Well, that was not a problem. They bought it with their money, and then they money from the money they invested. So a big tenant house. In many cases, the landowners would be living in the same house, but Mecklenburg-Strelitz didn't live there. They lived in their own palaces. On the on the first floor, there was uh, kind of a flower store uh, called Wagner's flower store, basically. They sold, for example, they sold tulip bulbs. They sold all sorts of seeds and also fresh flowers, but mostly, potted flowers. Also tools for gardening, and they all brought it from the Netherlands. That's quite a special place. And inside this house, there is a beautiful lobby. We haven't seen it yet. I have been to this lobby multiple times because a friend of mine used to live in this house. Once I took photos, and Oleg was able to get in. I mean, it's not really a big deal. There is a code, and if you know the code, you can access. Well, it's a bit more complicated if you have a concierge, if you have a, well, we call them concierge. If you have someone, sometimes in the really big and expensive houses, there would be someone downstairs sitting and making sure no one is not supposed to be in the lobby gets in, and story, but that's not the case. So freshly restored lobby. I don't know if there was anything else put on the walls. I think it just looks nice as it is with the decorations. And obviously Mecklenburg-Strelitz was well, he served in the army. All the Romanov had to serve in the army anyway, or at least have some related background, something like that. And here is a lot about that, but also a lot coat of arms and all sort of heraldic symbols. There's an interesting story which I think is the right one to be told on St. Valentine's Day. So I think it's super timely. So um, George Mecklenburg-Strelitz fell in love with a lady in waiting to his mother. Her name was Natalia van Larlarska, and she was just a lady in waiting. So she was from a nobility, but she was not anywhere near Mecklenburg-Strelitz that were blood relatives of Romanovs. And the family was very much against it because he was the eldest son of the family. He wasn't heir to the throne or anything, but he was the oldest son that represented the entire dynasty of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. So what he did, he went back to Germany and he abdicated, from every right. So he just signed off completely. He said he didn't need anything from the family. He wasn't going to, well, to become the next representative of the family, whatever. So like officially, like a member of a delegation, or he wasn't. Um, I was just robbed of the water. I'm really thirsty. Could you get me more water, please? Thank you. Thank you, Grisha. And that was it. So he just said he didn't need any responsibilities, any aristocrat's perks. No, he was totally ready, sacrifice all of that just to be with the woman he really loved. And later on, as you can see, Natalia Vandarska, well, it's in Spanish. I don't know why I just took the Spanish page. I'm not sure. But anyway, so after that, his family realized that he was taking Grisha. He was very serious about that. And they recognized her. And she was even granted a title of Countess of Karlov. And she's wearing a Russian costume for the 1903 big Russian ball that became one of the biggest balls of the 20th century in the world. Like, I mean it, well, at least before the First World War, maybe. I'm not sure. I think it's just in general one of the biggest parties of the century. So if she is there, it means she was there. It means she was totally recognized by the court. But she was just a lady in waiting. Yes, ladies in waiting did come from aristocrat families, but they were not they were not necessarily from very high aristocracy. No, it just could be, you know, something very simple, but still. So they were happily married. They had many kids together. They had a summer estate. They had, this is, by the way, their palace on the Fontanka River. It's their palace. So officially, and when he passed away, she, she was a widow, she lived in this house on the Fontanka River. And well, that's the photo of a bit better quality. Well, this is their family. And this is their house in Peterhof. So that was a good love story. That was a very good story. So, and it was, okay, 20th century, that's kind of already, many aristocratic families kind of already had a little bit more progressive views on marriages and everything. But still, for a royal family to let this happen, well, it was quite a precedent for sure. It was a big deal. It was a big deal. So that's a good story because we also know of all the other unequal marriages in the Roman family itself. and it didn't work out. So we know that. But because Mecklenburg-Strelitz was not really anywhere near the crown, and also because there was he disposed of any of responsibilities and official titles. So I guess they just realized how big his intentions were. So this is a good St. Valentine's Day story. Other St. Valentine's themed stories that I'm going to be sharing with you in 1 hour from now are not as good and not as romantic. I would say pretty mundane and a bit naughty and scandalous and pretty much 18 plus. So I'm not even sure if I will be able to share the recording on my YouTube later on. This is a question. I don't know. Okay, so hi everyone who joined us a little later. Dole, I'm glad you've been able to join. I have no idea why you don't have links. I have no idea what's going on. If I don't know whether it's Eventbrite that kind of changed everything or something else. I wish I knew. So once again, well, by the way, feel free to send in your questions. And in the meantime, I'm sharing with you the links for tonight and for tomorrow. It's taking longer. Not sure if it's going to load. And I think my laptop is just about to freeze or it's already frozen. I don't even know if I'm live actually. Okay, this is funny. No, actually it's not. Oh, okay. Okay. We can do it this way. I'll try to share it again, and if it doesn't work, I'll just copy it from the chat. And I see some messages coming in. Just give me a second. Okay. Just one more chance. I'm giving it just one more chance because, as far as I understand, well, the earlier messages might not be available to those who joined later. I guess that's how it works. Okay, let me see the chat. So, iPad update on Eventbrite or both. What's the dish after the caviar? I didn't get the name. I didn't say the name. The dish after the caviar? Do you mean what they served in the Orthodox bar? I don't know. It was just kind of some snacks that would go with alcohol. I don't remember what it was exactly. It was some veggies, but the cherries on top were the small, very, very small pine cones. And when they are small, you can actually bite them. They are not hard. And you can make, there is traditional Russian marmalade made from the pine cones. They're like berries. They're very soft. You can eat them. And that added a little bit of this, kind of mint, not minty, but the specific smell of the Christmas tree, right? So that was the interesting flavor of the whole dish. I don't remember the name. I don't know if there was actually a name to it. So uh love the lobby, very tasteful, just the right amount of decoration. Yeah, yeah, I also like that. Um, I mean, we have seen a lot more opulent lobbies, but I think that was just enough. Absolutely. Recent iPad update here too. Missed a lot of things. Oh, the iPad updates. Oh, I wasn't aware. Love the baby pine cones and food. Yes. Well, baby pine cones are delicious. So you didn't hear it. Yeah, because I didn't name it. I don't know the name of it. It's just it's their own recipe. It was delicious. I think it was some kind of veggies on the rye bread, like very dry rye bread. Or maybe it wasn't just even a bread, but like a bread crust. I don't remember now. But it's kind of a traditional Russian bread, like a traditional Russian recipe. And just some sort of a side dish maybe on it, and then with another Russian twist, something like that. So again, well, this is just one of the episodes. I think we're going to need maybe one or two more episodes because we will be visiting We will be visiting also an apartment, a museum of a Soviet dissident, Davlatov, later on. I think it's going to be in the next episode. It's a very small museum, unofficial one that was created. I even know the people who were behind the entire project of the museum, and I visited it one in like almost after it officially opened. I was one of the first visitors. It was very, very raw. And when Oleg filmed it for me, actually not much has changed since then. And it's been almost 3 years. Well, it's been 3 years now, and not really much has changed. So which is good. I like the way it looks very rustic. It looks very authentic, and it was a former communal apartment as well. So I think this is it. So I have shared with you all the links and all the information. So in 55 minutes from now, I am doing my St. Valentine's Day special tour, little naughty one. Pure history though, pure history, nothing dodgy, just as it was, and it was dodgy in general. And then after another hour, we are heading to Jerusalem and three tours tomorrow. Anton Chekhov with most of the iconic plays like Three Sisters, Uncle Vanya, Cherry Orchard, Seagull, and some others. Then I'm taking you to the Viceroy Palace in Tbilisi. Talk about also how Romanovs visited Tbilisi and where they would be staying, and also the politically what that palace meant, and then Armenian quarter in Jerusalem. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been recorded, so I will be sharing it on YouTube just the usual way. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for all the support. Thank you so much. Happy Valentine's Day. Looking forward to the naughty tour. Yeah, the naughty tour, exactly. Oh, Marius saying my sister is quite a bit younger than I am, so for most of her school years, Russian was no longer a compulsory subject. So she says that her Russian comes mostly from the text of the songs of Kino and Aquarium and Machina Vremeni. Wow. Yes, so Maria is referring to those iconic Soviet and Russian rock bands such as Aquarium and, well, Kino, yes, for sure. Machine of Germany, they were based in Moscow. Well, of course, they visited Leningrad and performed multiple times there in the rock club too. We spoke about rock club in one of the previous tours, but I will be talking about these things again. But I'm also be going to be adding more stories because there's always much more that I can share. So whenever there is a chance to share a bit more, I jump on it. So I can't wait to share more stories. So I will see you in less than 1 hour on the Naughty Tour. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your support. And I'll see you soon. Bye bye.